Hello everyone and welcome to Crochet with Carol. In today's video I'm going to show you how to make some fingerless gloves.
So I'm going to start with a chain of 15. So I'm going to take my yarn over my finger to start my slip stitch, put the hook through the loop and pull a loop up and just pull that closed. So that's not counted as one of your chains. So I'm going to chain 15, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 and 15. So I'll count those again. And you can see I've got one on the hook, which we don't count. And from the next one, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 and 15. And there's our knot at the end. So we're using double crochet stitch for this rib, which means we only need to skip the first loop and we're going to the second loop, second chain. So insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through. Insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through. And we'll continue all the way along and we'll have 14 double crochets. Don't worry about it curling up at the end. That's just what happens, isn't it, when you first start your project. Excuse me, dog hairs. They get everywhere. Insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through. We'll carry on all the way to the end. Until I get to the final stitch. So before I go into that final stitch, I'm going to count them just to make sure I've got the right number. So this is my first one. Sometimes it doesn't look as if you've done a complete stitch, but that's the first one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and this is our last stitch. Insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through, and that's 14. Now I'm going to put a stitch marker in this very first one because it sometimes can be difficult to see when we come round. And I've got another stitch marker ready to turn. So the turn and chain for a double crochet is to chain 1, turn your work. But for the rib, we're going to work into the back loop only. So we're going to do double crochet as normal, but instead of going into the full loop where your V is, we're going to go into the back loop only. And the back loop just means it's the one furthest away from you. Some projects will say go into the front loop, and that's the one nearest to you. For this one, we're going to go into the back loop. So insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through. To make sure I'm on track with the right stitches, I'm going to use a stitch marker, and it's going to go into that very first double crochet that we've just done. So I know that that's the end of that row when I come back to it. So I'm going to turn the work a little bit towards me again so I can see the V's along the top. I'm going to insert the hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through. and we'll continue all the way along in exactly the same way. I'm going to continue until we have, in my example, 28 rows. Now you might want to make a note of your rows as you go along. I sometimes write them on a bit of paper. I'll just check them off as I do each row. You can count the rows just by looking at your piece of work. It's not always as easy to identify your rows, but with the back loop only, it does make it stand out quite easily. So it can make it quite easy to count. Now when we get to the very last loop, I put the stitch marker in because, as I say, it's sometimes not that easy to see. But because I've got the stitch marker in, that very last one, we're going in the back loop of it, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through. I'll take my stitch marker out ready for the turn. And you can see the effect you get when I turn it slightly. You've got that little raised bit. So I'm going to chain one for the turn my work, and again just tip it slightly towards you. So that's the normal view, but if we tip it slightly towards us so we can see the top of the V, insert it into the first stitch. Now be careful again with this, you've got the stitch that's on your loop, on your hook, I beg your pardon, and then you've got another V, which was when we finished our previous row, but the actual stitch is the second one along. So you don't go into the first one, you go into the second one along. Insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through. And we'll continue in exactly the same way all the way to the end. And you can see the effect that we're starting to get. Oh dear, these hairs, I don't know if this is me or the dog now. You can see the effect we're starting to get with this raised edge. So I'm just going to continue in the same way all the way along, and I'll meet you at the end. So when we get to the end, I've got my 2 stitches left. So I'll go into the second from the end. And then my last one, the one with the stitch marker in, go into the back loop, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through. And then I'll take my stitch marker out. And there you see the way the pattern's starting to take effect. Now when you count your rows, the chain that you created, so in my case this is the chain right at the bottom here. I know it's the beginning of the chain because that's where my long end is. So we don't count that as a row. You start from the second, well, it's the first row after the chain. So I've got 1 row, 2 rows, 3 rows. And because the raised bit towards me is my row 2, as we increase the size of this piece of work, it's really easy to just pick up the raised bit and count 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, etc. You'll see what I mean as we go a bit further. So chain 1 for the turn the work, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through. I'm going to mark the end, the stitch marker. I know it seems a little bit of faff putting the stitch marker in all the time, but it does help until you get the hang of exactly where your last stitch is. So I'm going to continue in exactly the same way. And with the recording, you can speed it up, slow it down, whatever you like to help you continue with your work. But I'm just going to go silent now while I continue building this rib. I'm going to zoom out a little bit and just continue on in the same way. And look at that, I forgot to put a stitch marker at the other end. So if you do forget to put your stitch marker in, I know that that's going to be my last stitch, but if I wasn't sure, I would just make sure I went back and counted my stitches. So the first one, where the stitch marker is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Chain 1 and turn, insert into the back loop only, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through. And I will put my stitch marker in this time. You need 3 pairs of hands when you're crocheting, don't you? And then I'll come back to you when I've got to my penultimate row. So I'll get to row 27 and then I'll come back. So here we are at the penultimate row of our rib for the wrist, and I'm just going to finish this off with, got 2 stitches, 2 double crochets at the end, chain 1 to turn, and this is the final row. Now when you count your rows, the easiest way, especially when it's a rib like this, it is quite easy to count, because if you think about the tail end here, which is your chain, so that was the chain 15 that I did. The next bit is the first row of our rib. The next one, the raised one, is row 2. So it's quite easy to just go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26. Then I've got 27 that I'm on at the minute. And I want to turn and do my final row, which is 28. So into the back loop only. Now remember, when you do this, I've got 28 stitches because that's the measurement for my wrist. You'll need to decide what your measurement needs to be. When you do measure this, allow a little bit of room for the fabric to sweat, for the wool to stretch, because it will give quite a bit. So an easy way to try it out is to just literally take it around your own wrist and make sure there's enough for it to stretch slightly. Also thinking about your own tension. If you're using a tape measure to measure it, again, make sure that you leave that little bit extra for it to stretch. So we'll get to the end. And because of the pattern that we've got here, there's not really a right side or a wrong side. Don't forget your very last stitch. So we can use either side as the right side. So I'm going to do 1 chain at the end, and then I'm going to bring the other end in to meet. And I'm going to just do slip stitches all the way along to join. So I'm going to go into the very last chain, insert my hook, pick up the loop and pull it through, but bring it all the way through that chain as well. Now because I've gone in with my first chain, I'm going to go into the same space again, because I haven't actually stitched in or crocheted in the very first one or last one on my chain. I'm also going to do this in the front loop only. So instead of the back loop that we've been doing, I'm going to do the front loop only, because this side is going to become the inside. And if I do the front loop only, it'll leave a little ridge on the what will become the front of the work. Pull the yarn through and pull it through again. So you're coming through all three. So the front loop and then the chain at the back, pull it through all three. The front loop and then the chain and pull it through all three. I'm doing a slip stitch. There would be no problem with doing just a double crochet because it's going to be hidden, it's going to be on the inside. This just makes it slightly flatter by doing the slip stitch. So front loop, remember, for this very last one, and pull it through, and the numbers of stitches, because it's just one long piece all in the same length, you should have 14 chains and 14 double crochets to go through. So we're getting to the end now. I've got 2 left, front loop only, the chain at the back, and then the final one, front loop and the final chain at the back, and pull that through. There we go. So that's the cuff completed. If I turn it the right way around, you can see, although you can see a join, because we've got that slight raised bit, it helps to blend it in a little bit more. There you go. So here we are with the cuff finished. We've joined the edges together, and now, having turned it on its side, we're going to work around one side, one edge, to form the rest of our mitt. I'm going to chain 1, and then for each of these ridges, so we've got a prominent one on this side and then one that's sunken in slightly, we're going to go into each of those with 1 double crochet, and because there's 28 rows, that will give us 28 double crochets. So I'm going to go in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and then I've got the last 8, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, and 28. And then this is where the join is. We're going to go straight into the top of our very first double crochet and do a slip stitch to join the first row. Okay, and from here on we're going to continue, but I'm going to do a chain 1 and double crochet into the same stitch where my chain 1 is, So into that same stitch, same loop, and that's my first double crochet of the next round. I'm going to put my stitch marker in so we know where we are, and then we just continue with double crochet all the way around. Now when you get to the end, this is where it can be a little bit fiddly knowing which one is your last stitch. You could imagine that here we've either got one or we've got two last stitches. So make sure you count all the way around. That should be our last stitch. But I'm going to double check by counting all the way around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. So we've got one more to do for 28. So it's this one here is the last stitch. But you see how it can be a little bit confusing as to whether that's a stitch or not, but it's not, it's your starting point. So take out your stitch marker and go into that stitch there, the very top, pull the yarn through and pull it through again, so you're doing a slip stitch all the way through. Chain one, and then you continue in the same vein. Now I'm just going to try this on so that you can see what it's going to look like. So there's the cuff, and there's the join. What I try to do with the join is I try to make it, once I've got to the thumb hole, I try and put the join on the outside edge there, and I'll explain that as we go along. But we're going to continue doing double crochet. You can do a pattern here. I'm not going to do a pattern in this example because it can get a little bit fiddly to work out where to place your join. So just for this example, not today, but this example, I'm going to continue in double crochet. And what I want to do is I want to get to a point where I'm ready to start the thumb hole. Now generally I find that that's between 6 and 8 rows. So I've got 2 rows of double crochet that have already been completed. So I'm going to work up to 6 more, so I'll have 8 rows, and then I'll come back and join you. So I'm going to continue from there, doing exactly the same thing. So I've made me chain 1. Remember to go back into the same stitch that your slip stitch is in, double crochet, and continue that all the way around. Don't forget to put your stitch marker in that very first one. And then remember, when you get to the end, this is going to be your final stitch, not this one. So you could actually, if you wanted to, put a stitch marker in there now just to make sure that you remember which is your final stitch, because that is all part of this chain 1 that you did. So that would be your final stitch in this row. So continue like that until you've done another 6 rows, and I'll meet you back here. So here we are back at it's actually the 8th row. So after doing our first 2 rows of double crochet, I said to do another 6. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm just coming to the end of that now, into the last double crochet, and then we're going to join it with a slip stitch to the end of that row. And at this point, the next row is going to include a piece for the thumb hole. What I'm going to do with this example, because from my point of view, I prefer the thumb hole to be at this side of the work and the seam to be in effect in your wrist, at the back of your wrist, I beg your pardon. So the numbers add up quite well for this, with having 28 double crochets all the way around. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do 10 double crochets, and then I'm going to miss 8 stitches and do another 10. And when I miss those 8, I'm going to do a chain of 8. So we're going to start off with chain 1, and then we'll do our double crochet into the same space. So I'm going to do 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then I'm going to have a space of 8, which is going to be the thumb hole. So we're going to chain 8. Make these quite loose, this 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And making sure you don't twist this chain, keep it straight. We're going to miss 8 stitches, so that's our last one there. So we're going to miss 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and go into the 9th stitch with a double crochet, and then we'll do another 9, so this will be 10 stitches altogether. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and slip stitch to join. And I'll show you what that's going to do. So where the chain is here, that's going to become our thumb hole. So we are going to carry on stitching, doing our double crochets all the way along, but we're going to stitch into this chain of 8, and that'll be the thumb hole. All right. So we chain 1, double crochet back into the same space. So there should be 10 double crochets before we hit the chain. So we'll just double check that. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then in the space, we're going to do 8 double crochets into the chain. So we've got a chain of 8. So we're going to go into each chain and do a double crochet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then we're going to continue to finish this round with 10 double crochets into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now make sure you get this very first one. It's quite easy to miss this very first one. So hook into that one, pull up a loop and yarn over and pull through 2. So be careful, there's 2 quite close together here. Insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. My yarn's getting a bit tight. And then we're going to slip stitch in to the beginning of that row to join. Chain 1, and you're going to continue going round. This time you'll just go all the way around into the chains for the thumb hole here. So you'll do 28 double crochets all the way around, and I'll join you when 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, another 9 rows. So I finished my 9th row, and that's 9 from the thumb hole. So I've got my first row for the thumb, and then I counted 9 from there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. At this point, again, you can check to see whether this is the length that you want or not. And I'm quite happy that mine comes to just sort of halfway up my little finger, but you might want to take it a little bit further. So just do additional rows to suit, or less rows if you want it to be a bit shorter. And then when you're ready to finish it off, I'll finish this row as if this was my last row. So I'm just doing my final double crochet, and then I'm doing a slip stitch to join. And you could, at that point, you could cut your yarn there, pull your yarn through and weave your ends in. I want to do one extra thing because I think it looks quite nice at the end of the row, and that is to do a slip stitch in the back loop only. So in the same stitch that I'm in here, we have already done me joining slip stitch. I'm going to go into the back loop only, yarn over and pull through both loops, and then again there's my V. I'm going to go into the back loop, pull up a loop, but pull it through both, tighten it up a little bit, and I'm going to continue that all the way along, and you'll see that it makes quite a nice edge. I think that finishes off quite nicely. So I'm going to continue all the way along, back loop only, and just doing a slip stitch. Make it not tight exactly, but quite neat so that you haven't got huge loops. You know, I don't want to have big loops like this because it doesn't really look as neat that way. So I would make mine slightly tighter. But you know, this is all down to personal preference. Like anything that you do in crochet, you can do it whichever way suits you. It's more about being consistent. So you would continue all the way around until you join at the other end, and then you can cut your yarn and stitch in, weave in your ends. But I do think that makes quite a nice edge. And this pattern, you know, this whole pattern is very flexible because you can make the cuff as long or as short as you like, and you can make the length of the mitt itself whatever length you feel more comfortable with. You can make it a lot smaller, you can make it children's size, and you just measure the, you know, grab a child off the street and measure their wrists to see what works best for you. Now, I didn't put a stitch marker in, so I didn't know exactly where I was going to stop, but I can see that this is my last stitch. That was my first one from the previous row, so I'm at the last one now. And you would just cut your yarn there, pull it through and stitch your ends in, and that would be my finished. But I do think that looks quite nice at the end. It's quite a neat edge to it, isn't it? And obviously you can make them the same for the other side, for the other hand. So I hope you enjoy trying that out. Let us know what you think, and if you watch this video on YouTube, give us a like, thumbs up if you're quite happy with it. Thank you very much. See you next time.